certain less respectable persons of religious persuasions have given me quite a bit of flack over my fairly common sense claim that it is indeed possible for atheists to be moral individuals, and that many atheists do hold objective moral standards, arriving at those standards from a variety of philosophical persuasions. Here, I will argue to those individuals who have thus attacked my fairly common sense and moderate claims, and I will argue before them that not only are their assertions that atheists cannot be moral plainly wrong, these assertions are also unchristian, and in fact manifest certain heresies that are rejected by virtually all mainstream schools of Christian thought. Calling all atheists immoral betrays an ignorance not only of basic morality or basic human decency, but also of the very Christian theology that these people are claiming to adhere to. Now, the argument that all atheists are immoral goes something like this. Without the fear of eternal punishment in hell, or the desire for an eternal reward in heaven, why be moral? There's no reason to be moral because there are no consequences that follow from it. Well, first of all, this is patently absurd. If you act immorally, there are going to be consequences in this world. If you kill someone, you bet there are going to be people who notice. If you rob from someone, you bet there are going to be individuals who will seek restitution for that stolen property. If you lie to someone, you bet your reputation is going to be impaired. And furthermore, your own opinion of yourself, your own self-esteem and self-image will be damaged beyond repair once you pass a certain threshold of immoral behavior. So, it is patently absurd to suggest that for somebody who doesn't believe in God, there are no consequences to behaving immorally. But even more than that, within a Christian framework, it is illegitimate to say that the only reason for behaving morally is either fear of eternal punishment or the desire for an eternal reward. There is virtually no mainstream, intelligent Christian theological belief that holds that fear of eternal punishment or the desire for an eternal reward is a proper motivation for moral behavior. I'm going to explore a few mainstream schools of Christian thought here. First, there are the Calvinists and their various offshoots. The Calvinists believe in foreordained salvation. They believe in predestination, in essence. That is to say, God has already chosen who is going to be saved and who is going to be damned, and there's not one thing humans can do about it. No matter how they behave in their own lives, that's not going to affect by one iota their chance of being saved or not. So, in the Calvinist view, your behaving morally or not will have nothing to do with your salvation at all. So, at least in that perspective, the idea that you must behave morally in order to get into heaven fails miserably. Then there's the mainstream Protestant perspective, originating from Luther and held by many Protestant sects today. Mainstream Protestant perspective says that your good works do not lead to your salvation. Rather, it is faith in God alone that leads to your salvation, and you perform good works not in order to be saved, but because you already know that you are saved from your faith in God, and you perform these good works out of love for your for your fellow men, and your desire to demonstrate Christian virtue. Then there's the Catholic perspective. The Catholic perspective holds that both faith and good works are necessary for salvation, but you can't perform good works in a mercenary manner expecting to be saved as a result of that. As a matter of fact, the Catholic Church currently condemns the practices of the Catholic Church of the 15th and 16th century of selling indulgences to people who essentially did not act based on the principles of the Catholic faith, but expected to pay the church enough money and thereby expect to be saved. Those people expected to use morality as solely an instrument for getting into heaven or avoiding hell, or perhaps shortening their stay in purgatory. And current Catholic doctrine concedes that this is not a legitimate way to treat morality. If you engage in moral behavior solely for the purpose of getting into heaven or avoiding eternal punishment, God will see through that, and God will punish you for that. Then there's the Eastern Orthodox perspective. Every argument from a believer in the Eastern Orthodox faith that I've encountered states that it is great folly and presumption for a human being to think that he can look into the mind of God and figure out whom God is going to save or damn. And consequently, it must be grave folly and presumption to think that God will automatically save you if you engage in what you consider moral behavior, and also that God will necessarily damn those who are atheists, or those whom you consider to be atheists, or those whom you consider to be sinners, because you simply don't know the mind of God. That's the essential thrust of the Eastern Orthodox argument. So, I've shown from the Calvinist perspective, from the mainstream Protestant perspective, from the mainstream Catholic perspective, and from the Eastern Orthodox perspective, that the idea that the sole purpose for morality is to get an eternal reward or avoid an eternal punishment is not a legitimate Christian idea. So, what is, then, a good motive to behave morally? From a Christian perspective or from an atheistic perspective? Legitimately speaking, you should value moral action because of other kinds of consequences. If you're a Christian, you should perform moral actions because you like to, because it's in accord with your principles, because it would demonstrate certain virtues on your part, and will show you that you're a certain kind of human being, a kind of human being whom you would respect, have a positive image of. Similarly for atheists, I don't act morally because I expect a direct correlation between my actions and the reward for those actions. I do believe that positive consequences will ensue from that, but I also have a certain image of myself as a human being. If that image is violated through my own immoral action, I will have to live with that. And that will not be very comfortable. Because while I might run from other people and their opinions of me, and I might disguise my own deeds so that other people might be temporarily deceived, I cannot run from myself, and I cannot deceive myself. And that is my motivation for acting morally, so that I can be comfortable with my own identity as an individual. And I believe that that kind of approach is transferable across numerous philosophical perspectives, be they religious or non-religious. It's a much healthier approach than seeking an eternal reward and having that being one's sole motivation to act morally, or avoiding eternal punishment and having that being one's sole motivation for acting morally. Therefore, if you are going to call yourself a Christian, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to try to change your religious beliefs. But if you're going to call yourself a Christian, act like one. And actually find out what your particular brand of Christianity says about morality and who can be moral. Because the claim that atheists cannot be moral is not even a Christian claim. It is simply an ignorant and bigoted claim, propagated by people who do not display genuine Christian virtue, but who are rather suffused with hate.